I'm saying a lot. Let me just get to the video and then we'll go from there. All right, Candace Owens, you are up.
Possible in a society that has experienced so much social progress that we are seeing a decline in the Black community. The statistics of illegitimacy, crime rates, and illiteracy have worsened since the time of segregation and Jim Crow. In that same interview, Dr. King said something that I thought was timeless. He said, "It is both socially and morally suicidal to continue a pattern of deploring effects while failing to come to grip with its causes." This is reminiscent of Albert Einstein's famed quote, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results."
Sorry, I know we're only 38 seconds in, but I have to stop it right there. That's something that we talk about a lot. This is something that I think we should not only shine a light on our personal lives in various areas. It doesn't matter whether it's fitness. It doesn't matter whether we're complaining about the amount of money that we're making. We complain about the money that we make, right? We complain about the job that we have, but are we doing anything different to enhance our skills, to enhance our value? So therefore we can get a new job. Therefore we can ask for a raise. Therefore we can approach the raise from a standpoint where it's like, hey, this is the additional value that I've been adding, and I'd like to be compensated based on that additional value. But instead, we tend to live in a society where we will do the same thing over and over and over. And like Candace said, expect new results. We'll continue supporting the same group over and over. We'll continue to be fed lies by Democrats and believe in them, but expect certain things to change. We continue to get finessed. And all it is it's a certain amount of laziness on our end. It's laziness on our end to not do things differently, to not step outside of our comfort zone in order to get different results. Let's keep going.
While neither of them could have been possibly speaking to the predicament that we are in today, their words are timeless because for the last 6 decades, Black America has found itself in a rhythm of insanity, voting for the same party over and over again and expecting different results. It is, in my opinion, both socially and morally suicidal that we continue this pattern. Democrats have looked at us in the face and they have sold us worthlessness. They have told us that we cannot, that we need more government assistance, more handouts. We handed them power, and in return, they further diminished our sense of pride, the most important thing that we had, our sense of pride. We allowed their government to victimize us through the expansion of welfare policies. We allowed them, most importantly, to remove the fathers from our homes, removing the backbone of our families. They knew, the Democrats knew that without stable households, our children would pursue that paternity elsewhere. They knew that our children would run to the streets. They knew that our youth would grow up and begin to mirror themselves after rappers and basketball players rather than men of high intellect and values and more attainable goals.
Let's call it out. Let's be real. What are young kids looking up to? What do we always talk about? We talk about this idolatry. The fact that we idolize and we acknowledge the fact that this is the battle that we're in. Why do I always say that we have to make things look cool? Because we're competing against the things that are cool. A lot of times the things that are negative, the things that are going to negatively affect us, have us in the same position, have us on the same hamster wheel, have us continuing the same cycle of oppression, embracing victimhood, not competing, all these different areas. This is that mindset.
Their media took away the Jeffersons, they took away the Winslows, they took away the Huxtables, and they gave us love and hip hop.
When we look at all the things, you can, in my opinion, and I was having a convo with my mom the other day, and I said, yo, who are our leaders? Like, who are the people that we look up to? Who are our adult leaders? We have a lot of adult leaders as far as influencers, people that lead people. Doesn't mean that they're making positive influences or leading you to a positive place, but we have a lot of them from the ages of, let's say, 18 to 35. But who are the leaders from 40 to 75? Who are the people that we look up to? Who are the people that we see them and we say like, yo, that's a cool, honorable person that I look to follow, that I'm excited to learn from, that I'm okay with being open and being vulnerable from that standpoint, as far as um, putting down this shield that we put up a lot of times when we receive new information or when people are trying to give us information, but we put up this wall. Who are those people that we are going to sit down and listen to without having a wall up? Who are the people that we're going to be okay with challenging us to get outside of our comfort zone and do things differently? Who are these individuals? We don't have them. We don't have them.
They knew exactly what they were doing. They were resetting our goals. But what they didn't know, what they could have never predicted.
And is that something that y'all look at when it comes to TV shows? Think about the TV shows that used to show what they used to show. Let's just look at specifically, because I think that even though I say a lot on this show that a lot of the issues that have been perceived as quote unquote Black issues are now expanding out to the entire American culture. But I do think that the Black community, it shows up in a different way. It shows up in a magnified way. So even though sometimes we can focus on things that are going on in the Black community, we can understand that this is something that is impacting American culture overall, perhaps Western culture overall. So when you look at the TV shows, when they used to have the Jeffersons, now this is a little bit before me, even the Cosby shows. What is the other show, like 7201? I forget. All of the shows that were out were family based. When you look at Family Matters, Parenthood, Fresh Prince, look, My Little Brother and Me with Alfie, and D. What were the shows that were out? Even from the cartoon standpoints, Rugrats, Doug, all these shows were highlighting families. All of them. All of them were highlighting families. Even with the show with Mr. Cooper. What about the show with LL in the House? All of these were highlighting families. The first one that I guess highlighted single life, I guess, is like Living Single, Friends, those two type of shows. But think about how many other shows were highlighting the family structure compared to what we have now. Now it's all based on reality TV, who can do the most extreme dumb things in order to get people looking at them, who can make themselves look like more of a fool to be that clown in the circus that everybody may not even want to watch, but for whatever reason, you just can't take your eyes off of. That's what's become entertainment to us. And not only the shows have embraced this, but we talk about it all the time. The news stations have embraced this. Who can say the most extreme thing? Who can just get the viewership? That's all that this is based on. So we have to understand that the things that we're receiving, whether it's on the news, the things that we're receiving online, these are setting our perspectives on how we see the world, how we interact in the world. It's very clear for them. It's so easy for them to indoctrinate us. When we hear about the Pentagon having budgets and for Hollywood working with the government in order to spew certain amounts of propaganda, or in order to shape our minds based on releasing certain movies with certain things in them, they're just figuring out different ways to control our mind. It's all figuring out different ways to control our mind. And perhaps we just, because I guess our hands, and we're not in shackles anymore, we're not in chains, so therefore we don't see the chains and shackles that are placed on our brain from a mental standpoint, but those hold us back even more than a lot of the physical. Because at least with the physical, you understand what's going on. Somebody puts you in chains, you know you're in chains. Somebody puts you in shackles, you know that you are not free. You know that they are pressuring you to do something that is in their best interest. But when it comes to the mental standpoint, they figured out a way to have our brains in mental chains and shackles, to think the way that they want us to think, to see the world the way that they want us to see it. And therefore, they can pretty much control us like the sheep that they're looking to create. Just like what we talked about with John D. Rockefeller. I'm not here to create a nation of thinkers. I'm here to create a nation of workers, because that's what serves the elite the most. That's what allows the people who are in power to stay in power and to gain more power by them controlling how we think, how we emotionally react to certain things, the things that we're focused on, whether it's sports or any other level of entertainment. Let's keep going.
Predicted was that we might wake up to it one day. In 2015, when a man...
Let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys see it in the things that you're seeing on TV? When you listen to the music, do you see like, hey, this is a little bit different? Do you take note on how music makes you feel? Do you take note on the commercials that we're seeing, the algorithm that is given to us on TikTok, the amount of porn that is out here nowadays? Just across the board, are you guys seeing it, or do you just kind of see it the same as when we were children? Do you see the impact that she's talking about, or are we both just off?
And with crazy hair and a beautiful wife came down the escalator at Trump Tower. We were at the beginning of a shift, and I'll tell you honestly, I wasn't sure about him. I wasn't sure when he first came down the escalator. I said, isn't that the guy that says you're fired? Is he really running for president? But then an incredible moment happened. In August of 2016 in Michigan, everything changed for me when that same man did something that I believe will forever be recorded in Black history as a turning point for our community. That Republican candidate got on stage, he boldly looked Black America straight in the face, and he asked us, what do you have to lose? The courage of that moment, the courage for a man to challenge us to look around at our community.
That should show that you're in a bad place. When you think about it. Think about it. You have one candidate in Joe Biden who's running around telling people, you're not Black if you don't vote for me. He represents a party that has destroyed the lives of more Black people than any other group or influence in perhaps the history of our country outside of actual slavery. Just look at the crime bill. Look at the things that we complain about now. Look at the things that we're suffering from now with fathers not being in the household. We talk about this all the time. But when you can have one candidate sit here and say, you're not Black if you don't vote for me, and then the other candidate is saying, what do you have to lose? How does that make y'all feel? Doesn't matter whether you're Black or white or anything else. How does that make you feel? If that doesn't show us, hey, we've reached the end of this lesser of two evil path. You know, we continue to do this, and okay, now okay, we're at that point where maybe we should maybe have a different approach. Maybe we should start to question what we've just accepted as the norm for the last 30, 40 years of constantly and consistent, just supporting a particular group that every year, every election is telling you, hey, you know, we're gonna fix this for you, we're gonna fix this, and then nothing happens. Who's really the fool? Who's really the fool? I want to figure out when exactly this Candace Owens speech was. I need to figure that out, but let's keep going.
Communities, and to just acknowledge it, to be real, to be honest with ourselves, to acknowledge the filth of our communities and our inner cities, to acknowledge the state.
What's up, Shy? And then so this is what Never Forget Brother just wrote. Never Forget Brother is back. Pointless to make stuff that people won't consume. I'm not sure if you were on the show in the beginning. This is a battle between coolness. This is why I'll always say that it's a competition between, it's very easy to make negative things look cool. It's very easy to make just approaching life from a I don't give a F perspective. I'm going to do drugs. I'm going to drink. I'm going to do whatever it is that's just fun rather than what's purposeful. It's very easy to make that stuff look cool based on how we've already been indoctrinated to accepting a lot of those negative things as cool. It's very easy to make that stuff look cool. So what we have to do is, how do we now make the positive things that we need to push to our communities? How do we make that cool and more attractive than the other things that are negative? That's the competition there. How do we make a plumber, a mechanic, having their own business, being an entrepreneur, somebody in sales, I don't know, a teacher, educator, whatever it is. How do we make that look as cool as LeBron James? May be very tough. It's going to be very tough. But then how do we, okay, explain to a lot of the younger kids, and I think she's even going to touch on this. Well, actually, she did when she said, which is more attainable? How do we allow the kids to absorb common sense? How do we allow young adults and adults to absorb common sense and to say, like, hey, even though LeBron may be cooler and seem more fun, but me chasing that particular lifestyle, me chasing that particular career, based on the likelihood of me getting there, it probably makes sense for me to maybe choose a different path. It probably makes sense for me to invest a lot of my time, effort, and energy into something else that would produce an amazing life for me, have a greater chance of doing it, rather than playing the lottery and trying to become a professional athlete and then playing even a bigger lottery game of trying to become LeBron James. And Shy wrote, yes, everything is sex, drugs, and money. That's all it is. Very easy to make that stuff look attractive. Why? Because it may feel good in the moment. It's instant gratification. It takes you off of thinking about the things that you may need to be thinking about. It gives you an excuse. All these different things, we understand it provides a certain level of comfort, even if that comfort comes from just numbing your current situation rather than confronting your current situation. We understand what's going on, and that's just what's pushed in society. You didn't have any of these things. These things wouldn't even have been allowed. Wouldn't even have been allowed on TV. But then when you look at a lot of the stuff, reality TV, I watched one of these, I don't know how I saw it. I saw a clip of one of these shows with these young girls. And I think we actually played it on the show, where it's like a lot of these, I think this is the show that Krishan was on, where it's just these, y'all tell me if y'all know the show, but it's pretty much just these chicks running around like a bunch of boogers, fighting each other, doing all types of crazy stuff. And they actually allow them to fight and encourage them to fight on the show. It's like on a whole nother level with Bad Girls Club. You know, Bad Girls Club, they used to get kicked out for fighting, I believe, at least for starting it. Now these shows, yo, they damn near like set up a ring and let y'all go at it. And it's ladies doing it. Like, I don't know about y'all. I ain't trying to see that. I rock in the building. So iRock said it's an illusion of freedom. People have to start demanding better. And that's what it comes down to. It's on us. If we don't demand better from our leaders, from our politicians, and we can make the demands, we don't even have to necessarily be vocal with a lot of this stuff. We vote in different areas based on different things. What do I mean? We vote for a president with our actual vote, right? Going to the polls. But we also vote for a lot of these TV shows based on us watching it. We vote for a lot of this music based on us listening to it all the time. That's how we put in our vote. If the radio station or the record station sees that, hey, we're not supporting this ignorant music, we're not supporting this music that's pushing us down this ignorant path, then they're going to pay their artists now to make something else that we are supporting. So it's really on us in every single aspect of it. Just like iRock said, we have to start demanding better. We have to start pushing our candidates in a different way to say, hey, you can keep pushing these extreme narratives. You can keep pushing this victimhood. You can keep pushing all this other stuff that you've been pushing, but we're no longer supporting it. And they're just going to go along with now and change and say, okay, they're no longer supporting this. Now they're supporting that. So they're not standing on anything that they actually believe in. The only thing that they're trying to do is gain our support. So let's use that to our advantage. Let's leverage that. Let's leverage that and just say, okay, we're all demanding this. And then they'll work hard and diligently on that. Never forget, brother wrote, name one person that doesn't like sex, drugs, and money. I think that's the entire point. Never forget, brother. But it's the aspect of naming one person, let's say, who doesn't like promiscuity and being convinced that you should be able to have sex with every single woman rather than being on a purpose and having a family and growing a family and committing to a family, committing to a partner, all these other things. Of course, that's the whole point, that these are the things that we like. Why do we like them? Because these are the things that the quote unquote cool people that we idolize, they're doing. We've been convinced since a young age to like certain things. It's the same way. Why would we rather have Kool-Aid than fresh pressed fruit juice? Why? Because that's what we've been conditioned to like from a very young age. It's the very same thing. Sex, drugs, money, all addicting in different ways. The same thing with salt, sugar, and a lot of the other things that we're eating. Why are these processed foods so addicting? Why? Because it's like anything else. When you're pregnant, right? And you hear a lot of these like quote unquote crack babies and stuff, they get addicted to something based on what's put into their system, right? When they're in that fetal form or whatever baby stage that there is when the woman is carrying them. It's the same thing when we get out the womb. It's the same thing when we're walking around in society. We've been indoctrinated to like all of these things. That's the problem. Do they lead us along a good path, or do we end up becoming slaves to our vices of sex, drugs, and money? Do you think money is making us more honorable? Do you think drugs are making us more clear-headed? Do you think drugs are making us more rational beings? Do you think sex is making us more honorable people, more disciplined people? You tell us. That's what we're competing against. IROC wrote, maybe people should focus on what's good for us and not what's cool. Exactly. Exactly. Earth's in the building, checking in on it, jacket. So never forget, brother wrote, it's literally better now. Literally better now than any point in history. What makes you say that? What makes you say that things are literally better now? That seems to be a very selfish mindset. You mean things are better for you now than any other point in history? Things are better in what way? What would you say? Like, I can't, I'm not sure that I can sit here. If we're talking about specific things, let me ask you a question. Never forget, brother. If things are better now than any point in history, then why are we now? And I know you're not in America. I don't believe you're in America. But why are now in America both candidates? So things are better now than any other point in history, but both candidates are literally saying that what you had the Republican guy that we showed on the show. I forget what he was, a politician, and he said, yeah, if we lose this election, then we're going to need a civil war. And he's pointing to the biker gang to talk about creating a civil war. Then we got Democrats on the other side saying like, hey, if we don't win, then you're going back to chains and shackles. So how is it better now than any point in history? Are you a history scholar? Like, I'm really asking, because I don't think that anybody in America now, maybe where you live, but I don't think most people in America have a feeling that things are better now than any point in history. Shout out to Brandon in the building, big bro in the building. Back when our Constitution was written, God-fearing men and women had integrity. Their words and actions meant something. Today, lies don't have consequences. 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. All right, let's keep going a little bit with the video.
Of our broken culture, our broken school system. He forced us to stop accepting excuses. Every single person that is standing in this room stands here because at some
broken school system. We're going to talk a little bit later about this broken school system and maybe why it's broken. And also the question that I have to ask is, this is so funny. I had a conversation with my mom over the weekend, and we were talking about this article that she sent me with them now implementing video games into the school system. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And just the conversation that we were having regarding this, we were talking about the things that are allowed in schools, the things that are pushed in schools, compared to, I guess, other times. Let me actually save that for later, because that's the whole Principal Akbar, the college thing. But the question that's so funny is that when it comes to something like Project 2025, we keep hearing that that's so terrible, right? Project 2025. One of the things that people bring up is they're trying to destroy the education system. The education system is failing. It's failing. And I know for the first thing that most people try to say, well, they can't destroy it, they got to revamp it. My question is, why is it the people that are always defending this school system based on Project 2025 trying to destroy it, the people that are trying to defend it the most are the very people that it's serving the least. You get all these black people, especially on the liberal side, Democrats, they're complaining like they'll sit there and be mad at the education system. Well, we can't destroy the education system. Well, who is it failing? It's failing more of the black kids. It's failing more of the impoverished communities. But that's not the communities that I would think that are supporting Project 2025. So that's just the world that we're living in. We're just living in a world where literally people who something is failing the most will defend it the most just because, well, I don't care because the other side, they said it. So therefore, I'm just going to disagree with it and I'll rationalize why I disagree on it, how I move forward, rather than just saying like, oh, yeah, you should destroy it. It's not working. You can't just revamp everything. When you have a bad culture that is a part of a team, right? We always talk about cancers on teams, cancers in organizations. You have to, a lot of times, when there's a new coach that comes in, they don't keep the rest of the coaching staff. They come in, get rid of the coaching staff. They bring their people. And a lot of times they get rid of the players and bring their players. It just is what it is. And in an organization or on any other team, when you have that cancer on a team, you have to cut that thing completely out to even have a chance. And you may just have to start with something new. Let's keep going.
At some point, we had the courage to set our pride aside and to realize that for the first time in decades, we had somebody who was telling us the truth. And he just kept on telling it all around the country, dropping bars. Honestly, Trump might be my favorite rapper right now. My favorite moment of his campaign was he said, "Only Rosie O'Donnell, only
What's so funny is that it's like we only look at history. So let's look at what Never Forget Brother wrote. So Never Forget Brother wrote, was it better in the past when people enslaved each other? Or was it better in the past when we tortured people? Or was it better when we burned witches? You name a time before, and you will both know what they did worse now. He said 200 years ago, you wouldn't even be able to speak freely, and it's not better now. Well, you know, there was a time period right after slavery. Where black people were doing exceptionally well in America. Now, did they still have to deal with a lot of the things like Jim Crow and a lot of these other things that came up? Absolutely. Absolutely. Was there certain amounts of hatred? Absolutely. But when you look at specific areas, right? Because that's how we have to go off of. We can't just look at one, but you have to look at specific areas. When you look at specific areas, when it came to poverty, black people were getting married at a higher rate. Black people were more successful. There were more successful businesses. Show me hey, never forget, brother. Show me a successful black community. Show me a successful black city. There were successful black cities. It wasn't just one Black Wall Street. There were successful black cities around the country, around not only just Rosewood, not only just Tulsa, they were in North Carolina, Chicago, Philly. There were successful black areas. Why? Because of integration and segregation. I'm sorry, because of segregation. We didn't lose those things until integration. Matter of fact, black communities were doing so well that it grew as a threat, which is when a lot of people say that, oh, that's when we had to make the decision to desegregate. It wasn't just to be nice to people. So there's different areas that you have to look at. You can't just say like, oh, this was a time period where things were just better. Yeah, life is better for people. You want to know why black people can speak freely right now? You want to know why black people can speak freely, quote unquote, freely right now? What did we just talk about? What are all the entertainers? What are all the rappers speaking on? We're allowed to speak freely because most of us that speak freely and most of us that get a mic are just going to put poison into our communities and be saying stuff that is going to convince the community to do dumb shit that's going to end up with you getting locked up or killed. So therefore you become a slave. So you may not be aware of that, never forget, brother, but slavery is still happening and legal. It's legal when you get locked up. You don't have access to those same freedoms. So even though slavery may have looked differently back then, we're still seeing slavery. We're still seeing free labor. We're still seeing all those different things. And that wealth gap, when you look at it, especially between black people and white people now, when you look at the household income with black Americans being at the bottom of 15, they did a study on 15 different groups, and black people were at the bottom. That was not the case 100 years ago. That was not the case 90 years ago. That was not the case 80 years ago, which happens where a lot of liberal-minded people like yourself, never forget, brother, decided to come in and say, hey, let's start implementing a lot of these social programs and start incentivizing women to not need men in the household. And that's when things took a terrible downturn for black people in America. So you have to be very specific when are we talking about health? Do you think that the health, when we look at gym classes right now compared to gym classes back then, when we see the obesity rates back then to things right now, there was a post, matter of fact, let me share my screen real quick. That's why I'm glad y'all know I love this. Y'all know I love this. Shout out to Never Forget Brother. Let me show you this post real quick. Let me go on my Instagram. Hold on, where did I see it? Let me show y'all this. Since we're talking about it, since Never Forget Brother's bringing it up. Hold on. Hold up. Instagram. Look at this.
I'm not making this video because I hate fat people. I just don't think most people understand how corrupt everything is. Bro, the people who own the cigarette companies are the ones who own the processed food companies. They thrive off of addiction. Food pyramid we were taught in school is a scam. People don't walk around just wanting to be morbidly obese. See, the food...
Did you see the picture in the beginning? That's what I want to focus on. When you see this picture right here of 1960s on the beach, 2023, I'm seeing a lot of those. I'm seeing a lot of those images. That's what's happening. So when you look at and just say, "Oh, the world, you're not in chains. You're not in." That's how they get us. That's how they get us to accept the world that we're living in right now as it's better than what it was before slavery. And most of us don't even know any history before slavery, right? Because we're not taught that. So therefore, in our minds, that's how they get us. That's how they have our parents and our grandparents' generation so stagnant. Because what do they think in their minds? They're coming out of, they're the children of Jim Crow. So it's like when your standard is, well, things are, what are we complaining about now? 200 years ago, we were in slavery. So that's what we'll base the standard on. And that's how they keep us in this oppressed and victimhood mindset, because at least anything is better than slavery. We won't even look at how we were doing right after slavery compared to how we're doing now. We won't look at the amount of businesses that we had, the type of neighborhoods that we had, the things that we owned, the amount of wealth that we had in the country. We won't even look at those things post-slavery. We'll just look at things now and compare it. We'll just skip right over and just go right to slavery, or we'll be in slavery and skip right over to now. We won't look at that time period in between. We won't look at the fact that we had a lot more households marrying each other. I mean, a lot more households with married couples. We won't look at the fact that there's so many different things that we don't use to factor into life being amazing right now. We don't look at the disease epidemic that we have right now. We don't look at any of this stuff, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Never forget, brother, what I agree with you, right, brother? Thank you for your service. Not military service. So being so rich and lazy, we can get fat is bad. Bro, what are you saying? The very people that are, this is why, and I'm glad this is happening. I'm glad you're commenting, Never Forget, brother. And I'm glad y'all are able to see me respond in real time. So Never Forget, brother wrote, so being so rich and lazy, we can get fat is bad. This is what happens when you have individuals that are not in America or are not in a particular situation and community that comment on it from the outside looking in and base a lot of their statements on the propaganda that they've received. People are fat and obese in America in the most impoverished communities. What are you talking about? The people that are dying from these diseases of being overweight, being obese, being unhealthy, those situations are occurring more in the impoverished areas than other areas. So what are you saying? He wrote, we're doing so good compared to the third world. We can eat so much food. We get fat and lazy. It's the things that we are eating. It is the things that we are eating. And never forget, brother, just a heads up. Remember, there's something in America called social programs. So therefore, a lot of these things that the people are consuming, this food, first and foremost, the food that's going to get you fat and make you lazy costs less than the actual good quality food. But you're approaching it from a mindset because you've been indoctrinated and manipulated with whatever propaganda you received. In your mind, you're looking at Americans as saying, oh, they must all be doing so well. That's why they're obese. Well, why does the group at the bottom, Black people in America, why do they struggle? And when I say household income, people making the least amount of money, why are they struggling with issues like obesity? It's the type of food that is made available in those communities. It's the type of drugs that are relied on heavily in those communities. That's why you have a liquor store on every corner. That's why you have Popeyes and Crown Fried Chicken and all this disgusting quote unquote food. This is why it's happening. All right, so let's keep going. Thank you, Never Forget, brother.
Rosie O'Donnell. Only our 45th president.
And we're going to just watch a couple more minutes of this because we got a couple other videos to get to.
Donald J. Trump, and I'm going to tell you what I love about him. I get that question all the time, Candace. What do you love about Donald Trump? What I love about Donald Trump most is his audacity. The audacity that it took to stand up and look Black America in the eye. The audacity that it takes to call out these crooked Black Democrat politicians that have received billions in aid from our government and effectively stolen it from the struggling cities that they represent. The audacity to call out Elijah Cummings. The audacity to call out Maxine Waters, who lives, by the way, in a $6 million home outside of her own district. President Donald Trump has both the spine and the audacity to save Black America.
We're going to leave it right there. We're going to leave it right there. Because I really didn't want to make it about super just Donald Trump, to be totally honest. Didn't want to make it about that. But you can understand how the things that she's calling out would be silenced. You can understand how the things that she's talking about, so many different areas that we need to address, and just calling it out in a particular way that most people aren't used to hearing people talk like. Most people aren't willing to, and what's so sad about it is it's so obvious, the stuff that's happening. It's not like she's saying anything that's earth-shattering. It's not like any of us can't look at the TV and see that the changes that they made and the things that we're consuming and that what is just readily available to us on X or on any of these other platforms. It is just from porn to anything else that is pushing negativity in the communities. Across the board, we're seeing it. It's so readily available. So let's move on. I do want to share with y'all, share a couple of other videos. So let's go to actual X. All right. So let me play this video. I'm not going to, it's based on what she just finished up saying.